Chaturvedi from Godrej Material Handling, and it's my absolute privilege to host Mr. Arif Siddiqui to this platform in today's conversation. Before we talk about the elaborate credentials of Mr. Siddiqui, let me just quickly brief you about this platform for those people who have joined this platform for the first time. This platform is known as Storage and Handling Knowledge Series, and over the last almost 2 years now, we have been sharing pure knowledge that we have gained over decades of experience with our customers and the industry colleagues. The whole purpose being that while we may be subject matter experts, why don't we give back to the industry what we have gained? And in the process, if companies gain, if they are able to be more productive, more efficient, the supply chains get more productive, more efficient, and in the process, our country also goes towards greater heights of progress. So that's a very small initiative that we are trying to do through this platform by sharing the knowledge and nuggets of information that we have gathered over all these times. Now, this platform is dedicated to the intra-logistics space, just to make it very specific, so that anything that and everything that goes within the supply chain, within the intra-logistics space is mainly what we intend to cover. While we have done that, we have also tried to cover the peripherals of the intra-logistics space, which also adds to the efficiencies and productivities of this space. Now, like today, we have an esteemed guest with us. We have hosted many other dignitaries on this platform earlier, and we have shared plethora of knowledge on this platform, and we are really humbled by all the sort of appreciation that has been shared by the industry colleagues, which has allowed us to keep going in this initiative. Now, talking about today's topic, I would say this is one of the most contemporary topics that we would like to talk about. This is basically the envelope of whatever we have been discussing over the last 20 webinars. We have been talking about racking systems, storages. We have been talking about material handling equipment. We were talking about safety practices, maintenance practices, batteries, chargers, controllers, and you name anything, everything and anything is something which goes inside the envelope of either a warehouse or a storage system or a plant where all these elements come together. So today, that's why I was saying today is a very, very contemporary topic, because this is something that will sort of put everything in a thread. And who better than Mr. Arif Siddiqui can help us in doing that? So I would like to take the help of a document, because this is not something which is the credentials are not something that you can humanly remember. So please pardon me to read out the credentials of Mr. Siddiqui. So Mr. Siddiqui has had 33 years of in-depth experience in sales operations and business management, and in which 29 years have been in 3PL distribution and warehouse infrastructure design services. And he has worked with various companies in senior positions in the supply chain domain. And he is the founder and director of Coin Consulting, which was established in 2005. So a warehousing process and flows based infrastructure and fit out design consultancy, Coin Consulting, is advising leading MNC and Indian third party logistic companies on various aspects of warehousing and the infrastructure. And he has conceptualized and designed supply chain solutions and distribution centers for leading Indian and multinational brands, leading to improvement in capacity, productivity, and efficiency. So in the supply chain infrastructure and warehouse fit out space, Coin Consulting has conceptualized the design for over 70 million square feet of modern warehouse buildings and logistic parks across the industries, whether we talk about pharmaceutical, fashion, retail, agri commodity, third party logistics, you name it and you have it. So, as I said earlier, we could not have had anybody better than Mr. Siddiqui to sort of tell us and take us through the topic for today, warehouse to smart box, the new wave. Now, today's session, we tried to do a bit. We are attempting to do a bit differently. Generally, the format is that the speaker generally takes us through a sort of a detailed sort of a talk which lasts for almost 45 to 60 minutes, and then we take the Q&As. This time we wanted to make it more interactive, more immersive, and that's why we have sort of structured this communication in a more like a conversation rather than a presentation. And I would invite all our audiences and participants to keep posting their questions as we are going through the flow, which will help us to remain engaged and which will help us to gain more, because the more you ask, the more we will be getting into the depth of this subject and we'll be able to sort of learn together. So that's the whole purpose. So we are going to have a, conversation around this topic. So with that, let me begin this conversation by setting the broad context. So, Mr. Siddiqui, when we talk about intra-logistics and supply chain per se, we understand that almost 10% of any logistic cost goes into warehouses, okay, which is a huge chunk. And but in India, the evolution has is happening, but it has happened over a long period of time. We had the erstwhile go downs, then we had warehouses, and now we are talking about smart boxes. Do you really think that the term warehouse has really come of age, and we are and companies are really are aware what is the importance of a warehouse, Mr. Siddiqui?
Thank you very much, Abhishek. Thanks for the introduction. And I should first of all thank you and Godrej Material Handling to have invited me for this very, very important, very essential topic of discussion. Uh, and also for this great initiative that you've taken, up for the past 20 months, very consistently covering such important aspects. Very well done, I should say first, and thank you very much again. Yeah, coming to your question, uh, we have evolved. The answer is very simple, and I think some of it has been purely out of passion, but most of it has been because the customer has made us evolve. And the demand has changed, the behavior has changed. As I keep saying, that the critical function of a warehouse is order fulfillment, and order fulfillment is driven by what a customer demands and what his expectations are with regards to the quality of fulfillment. Uh, this has necessarily led to the change that we see from godowns to warehouses to distribution centers to fulfillment centers, to dark stores, uh, and to smart boxes for that matter. This evolution has taken place. We can see this as we move out of our cities, and especially during the weekends when we drive out of our townships to go and escape out of the hustle and bustle that we normally live in. Across all the metropolitans, you would find these new age structures, on the left and right side of the road coming up, which earlier were not there, and nice, beautiful buildings, made of tin or, for that matter, metal buildings. And this is clearly, an evidence that the change has taken place. And why not? This change is something so essential that we need to make sure that this continues. And if you look at what is happening across the globe, this change is happening across the globe. People have adopted to it, businesses are adopting to it, and they are constantly growing. If you look at the growth of such infrastructure, which we call as A plus or class infrastructure, this is growing at the pace of approximately 18% year on year. And you find there are so many existing developers, old Indian developers, who have transformed, from building old design and specifications to new age designs. There is a lot of private equity fund that is being invested, in companies which are now developing logistics parks and mega logistics parks. So the trend is on, and this is something which will continue to grow. Fundamentally, Abhishek, what is important for most of our people to understand is that these requirements revolve around three broad aspects. The first critical aspect, with regards to the design, is to do with the infrastructure. More often than not in the past, the difference was that there wasn't any key focus on the infrastructure around the warehouse. So planning was done more to occupy more and more ground coverage, because it was the ground coverage that was leading to rentals. The peripheral roads, the estate roads, the development around the entire place, services, utilities were not really of great importance. The second aspect in the entire thing, I should say, revolves around the building by itself, the specification of the building. And the third was to do with the intralogistics. As you have said, that this entire knowledge series is about intralogistics, has been to do with intralogistics. Now, these three elements, if I should say, add up to making a smart box. If you are missing in any of these three elements, in any of these departments, if your infra does not support the function, the building doesn't support the function in completeness, and the intralogistics is not supported by the building and the infra, fine, then I don't think you qualify to have evolved, or you qualify to call yourself as a smart box operator.
Right. So, Mr. Siddiqui, you just spoke about three very important elements: the infrastructure requirements, the warehouse building, and the intra warehouse design. Okay. Now,
Yes.
if I right now come back and focus just on the warehouse part, okay, and we talk about a smart warehouse. Now, what are the various elements of a smart warehouse, as we say, and what exactly is smart? We know that common acronym, that specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So I'm sure that this is what we mean when we talk about a smart warehouse.
Abhishek, undoubtedly, you're absolutely right. When we talk about smart, we are actually referring to specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. We are referring to that here in terms of warehouses as well. It is so critical that everything that we design is designed for a purpose. As I mentioned, and I keep saying this in different forums and to different people, that these buildings are extremely functional buildings. They are delivering end results of processes. They are delivering a service. The buildings are a part of the delivery system. The infrastructure is a part of the delivery system. The processes that are operating within these buildings are part of the delivery system and the service. So the fact is that if you have customers who are constantly evolving and they're constantly changing, they want information to happen on time, they want the products to be delivered on time, safely, at the right time, in the complete form, then you need to consistently have a smart infrastructure which is delivering these services on time and is also scalable. So the requirement from the infrastructure is ever changing. As the sun rises, you have a new requirement that comes in. You have a new set of products that are to be delivered. So you are right, buildings are currently measured on their performances. Buildings are measured on the basis of what they are supposed to, their purposes. Buildings are measured on the basis of their relevance in the business. And buildings are completely measured on how their performance on time boundedness is. And this is what we are referring to, and what we'll be talking through the day, through the next hour today, is all going to be around these specific 5 aspects, as you said: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound.
Right. So now, when going a bit deeper into this particular topic, there's always that tussle between standardization and flexibility, especially in the context of when we're talking about a smart warehouse, which actually has to serve a plethora of requirements. So, what, according to you, should be the balance? Like somewhere we talk about flexibility to take care of different type of SKUs, different type of package boxes, and all that, and at the same time to drive down the cost and to have cost optimization in a smart parlance. You also talk about standardization. So how do we come out of this tussle?
Very, very nice. I think this is a very common issue. It's a very common question, and I think it's a challenge that comes in minds of people. First of all, before we even start answering this question, I would like to, create some sort of a prelude to this. And that is the first thing to do is the fact that we should first of all understand our operations. That is the first differentiating factor. Domain knowledge becomes an important critical aspect even before you start talking about standardization. The question is, what do I standardize? How much do I standardize? And which are the elements that need to be standardized? I mean, are essential as far as standardization is concerned. Standardization is something which has been discussed for several years, and the effort has been to see that we are able to standardize forms. In the warehousing sector, the first effort has been to standardize building specifications. Okay, because those are specifications which cut across industry sectors. Like, for example, we've been looking at standardizing the floor of a warehouse. We've been looking at standardizing heights of warehouses. People have been looking at standardizing the number of air changes that you need within a warehouse for being able to operate in a manner that human comfort is essentially focused on. People have started looking at standardizing the weather inside the warehouse. When I talk about the weather, we talk about temperature by using insulation as a standard factor. So there is a lot of effort in standardizing the building side and the infrastructure side. Like, for example, trying to standardize the apron size of a warehouse, the docking and the loading and unloading facility, so that 40-foot containers by default, are accommodated in a facility. So a lot of standardization, Abhishek, has started happening on the building and the infra side. But when it comes to the intra side standardization can't be brought in so easily because it is very specific to the processes of each business. It is very specific to the industry segment that you're talking about. What works in e-commerce may not work in retail. What works in retail may not work in chemical. So that level of standardization, I think, is still a long to go. But when it comes to buildings, so I think in India we have already adopted to standardization of specifications, and the promotion now is to see that we have more and more warehouses which actually pass on, or rather pass through the entire gateway of a standard specification. And here we are not talking of A plus. I mean, I'm not a very big fan of the word A plus, A and B, because for me, whatever is called as A plus is actually standard. That's quality, conformance to requirement. Okay. So if it is conforming to requirement, then it is supposed to be A quality, or it's supposed to be the quality that you require. So there isn't, we cannot, since these are functional buildings, you cannot actually start saying that they are A plus, and C minus type of buildings. They are standard buildings that conform to quality. So standardization is happening, to answer your question. And I'm very happy to see that, we have been very successful as an industry, in slowly moving and inching towards standardization of buildings and infrastructure first, which is the right step to take and the right way to move ahead.
Right. So I think you have put it very, very beautifully and very clearly that when we talk about standardization, it is the infrastructure per se, the flooring, the building, the way the weather is managed and the environment is managed. But when we talk about flexibility, it is very respective to the respective business, whether it is chemical,
Yes.
pharmaceutical, e-commerce. So very well put. Now, this gives a thought that what is the role of a subject matter expert in bringing together all these elements? or is it somebody like an integrator who has to come on board, or is it like individual subject matter experts have to be coming together for designing a smart warehouse? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, nice. I think you're really picking the right words there. Abhishek, I should say. Uh, as I mentioned, these are functional buildings. The first important thing, we need to very clearly understand, and I would encourage all developers, all people who are in this business of this type of project managing, etc., to look at this entire subject in two different angles. First of all, is to look at the fact of the subject matter expert who brings in the domain expertise, functional domain expertise. Number one, you know, the purpose of the building or the general purpose of the building. Knowledge of process is so important while designing a distribution center or a fulfillment center. So process knowledge is brought in by subject matter experts. Operational knowledge is brought in by subject matter experts. Cross-functional and cross-industrial knowledge of operating processes, how inwards are done, what are the inter alia processes between inward and put away, how picking is done, what are the inter alia processes between picking and dispatch, etc., etc. The more important thing is, with the changing technology, being abreast with what are the various technological changes that are constantly taking place, or being able to forecast the type of technology that will happen in the economic system that we belong to. That's very important. We talk about technological changes, but we do not realize that the technology also has to give some sort of a return on investment, to the business in which it is being invested. Fine. It has to make economical sense to the business that it is being invested in, and that knowledge is something which comes from the subject matter expert. So one is to look at the conceptualization, designing the concept, designing the buildings from an operating perspective, changing vehicles. I mean, today one of the big problems or challenges in logistics park is congestion, is traffic congestion. I mean, you drive all the way from Bombay to Delhi, and when you come to Delhi, you find that your vehicles are waiting outside the logistics park because there's congestion there. Vehicles can't turn around. 40-feet containers, container carrying vehicles cannot, are stuck at different places, etc., etc. So these are so the aspect of congestion. So here you can see in this exhibit that I'm currently presenting here. I'm sure it's visible. Find that all these aspects of understanding that we've got bigger vehicles bringing material inwards, we've got smaller vehicles, as you can see here. The pointer here shows you that there are smaller vehicles which are carrying material outwards, and both of them are of different heights. Both of them are having different plinth requirements. However, the building has to service both these requirements in terms of efficiency and productivity. This is so essential, and this is what is brought about by subject matter experts. I will just conclude the answer to this question by saying, Abhishek, that the understanding of what interacts from outwards and what interacts within is actually what the subject matter brings in. The touch points of the warehouse, what interacts with the warehouse and what interacts within the warehouse, is where the subject matter expert brings all the value. And that cannot be ignored at any point of time. Consistently, I can see that it is being ignored in many functions, in many developments, and then you end up having a short-sighted development. You can tell the difference between one logistics park and the other, one warehouse and the other. And these differences are purely on account of the lack of the knowledge from the subject matter expert in terms of helping in the planning process, helping in the designing process, helping in the overall process of traffic management, etc.
Right. I think very aptly put that the subject matter experts actually bring the experience and the know-how of that particular aspect, so that at least at the planning stage, you are not getting in a wrong direction or something like that. And of course, once the implementation is done, there is a learning every single day. But at least at the planning stage, you are sure that you are doing the right thing. based on the
Right.
past experiences that you have had. Now, very interestingly, you just touched upon a aspect which is something, according to me, is not really taken care of much at the planning stage, is the docking area, where the turnaround time, the trucks are holding on for a long period of time, the loading, unloading takes a lot time, and there is a huge traffic which gets built up at logistic park, leading to various types of environmental issues, management issues, and all that. So, what,
Yes.
according to you, and how do you think vehicle and human traffic is managed to ensure controlled access leading to safety and security? Just to get deeper into that point that you just mentioned.
Good point. And I'll try to see that, in the limited time, I can quickly explain this very important aspect. I'll tell you three things very quickly. Uh, Developers look at earning revenue through rentals or making revenue through the square feet area, either selling the property or renting the property.
Right.
So for them, the more they cover, more the ground cover,
Right.
the more revenue they make.
Correct.
As far as traffic is concerned, the point that you just asked, the more the open area, the better the traffic
Right.
movement.
Right.
So there's a whole controversy.
Correct.
There's a whole controversy in terms of a conflict of interest there.
Right.
That if I give you more space to travel around, I lose money because I am paid on. So this is where the whole thing happens.
Right.
So that's why I keep saying that these are very functional infrastructure. You cannot overlook any of these three elements that I established in the beginning of this discussion.
Right.
You will have to keep the focus on intra warehouse. You'll have to keep the focus on infrastructure and the building. All three things together. Traffic basically forms traffic management, and traffic planning forms a part of the infrastructure. You know, uh, so that is one important aspect. Second important aspect that we need to understand is the changing types of vehicles and the quantity of vehicles that are now visiting warehouses. Earlier, warehouses were godowns. They were only storing material for one fine day when they will be removed and accessed from there.
Right.
Today, these are literally like factories. Warehouses have become like factories. There is so much happening inside the warehouse. You have so much of processing happening inside the warehouse. You have so much of activities like labeling and sub assembly, kitting. A lot of activities are happening. So it is becoming like a processing center. When you talk about that, there is a lot of inbound and outbound and throughput of vehicles that are happening. And you can't think of dividing. You can't think of ignoring that aspect. So one, that's it. Second is, with so much of processing happening, you also have a lot of people coming in and going out. And to share with you, this exhibit that I have here, you can see here from what I'm trying to show through my pointer here. You have this pedestrian traffic, which basically takes care of people movement. You have a separate wicket gate, which takes care of people entry, so that they are not conflicting with the traffic. You have a separate traffic corridor or a vehicle corridor, which is taking care of the movement of vehicles. Now, all these aspects are able to ensure safety of people, smooth transfer of vehicles and smooth travel of vehicles. At the same time, smooth travel of people. You can't imagine. I mean, I don't have to tell most of the people who are listening to this conversation, that there are warehouses now where in 1 lakh square feet, you have as many as more than 200 to 300 people working. Imagine a 300,000, 400,000 or 5 lakh square feet or 4 lakh square feet box. It has 1,000 people working in it. Now, that is the type of human traffic that is taking place in large logistics centers. And therefore, consideration of these elements become very important. These are managed by ensuring that you have a complete park level control. I have been to so many logistics parks, and I can see that you just can easily drive in the logistics park without being even asked. You can drive in and reach right up to the rolling shutter of the building. Only when you want to enter into the building, you will find one santri there or a guard there who will perform his duty of saying where you want to go, etc., etc. But up to the rolling shutter, I can get into it. I can stand outside, see, take pictures, do whatever I want to. Nobody's. Now that's not what we call as a smart logistics park. A smart logistics parks only allows authorized people who have come for a purpose internally, you know. So there needs to be gate level, I mean, park level security. There needs to be building level security. I can enter into the logistics park as an authorized person, but I cannot enter into any of the warehouses just because I could enter into the logistics park.
Right.
You know, so different levels of security are important.
Right.
Second thing that is also important is, for example, the boundary of wall of a logistics park. Now, we go to that extent of saying that people sometimes jump boundaries. Even the design of a boundary becomes critical and important. You know, it is so important to make sure that your boundary wall doesn't have any designs or any projections so that a person can keep his feet or his toe over the projections and jump into the boundary wall. You know, now that's a matter of detailing. Boundary walls have to be designed in that manner that they cannot be just jumped into or walked into or broken into as such. Very important aspect, generally not looked after, not looked at, because it costs a lot of money.
Right.
You know, concertina wires are not very cheap. So that's the other part which is important. And I mentioned about segregation of human traffic and vehicle traffic. So very important. Third is, why do we forget? There are people walking, there are bikes, cars, buses, there are trucks, and all of them behave differently. All of them drive at different speeds. All of them have different exposure to accident. You know, how do we make sure that we design these parks where, you know, the cars don't conflict with the trucks don't conflict with the bikers don't conflict with the pedestrians, you know, and that's where intelligent designs, and that's where the smartness lies. And parks and warehouse structures which are able to distinguish and segregate these movements so that there are zero accidents are smarter than those which do not take care of these in their designs.
Right. I mean, I think very well put. That reminds me of a small, I mean, this was an incident, but now that we look at it, a background, we can call it an anecdote. So I visited this one of the so-called logistic park. I don't know whether I should call that a logistic park or not. There was just enough space for a 40-foot trailer to park itself in front of the ramp. Okay. And it was literally a point that if you park that, the vehicle movement cannot happen across that trailer as long as the trailer is there. So it was literally like a railway crossing, that till the time the trailer is getting loaded or unloaded, all the traffic is stuck. And I was like wondering that how can a planning happen like that? I mean, why did, and if the planning was not for 40 feet, why is the 40 feet here? I mean, so that was a thing. And on that particular day, as luck would have it, that trailer broke down, like, and it was like,
Yeah.
and then these are the things which create so much chaos and so much cost, and that really sort of bring down the productivity and efficiency big time. So what the point that you put across about the truck management, the traffic management, and human management is so important. And another important thing, Mr. Siddiqui, that you just mentioned, which I would just like to reiterate for the audience, that from from builders' perspective, they want to maximize the space, rightly so. From from truckers' perspective, they would want a wider road so that two trucks can pass each other and traffic is minimal. But somewhere there has to be a balance, because while space optimization is important, at the same time, as we say, as long as the wheels are moving, the truckers are also earning, and the more they stop, the more they lose money. Okay, so I think from the industry perspective, we have to find that fine balance between the two, and that's where we go back to the point that we were mentioning about having subject matter expert, and they bringing in these expertise and making sure that either of the interests are not compromised at the expense of each other. So just wanted to yeah, cover up that point with this small incident. Uh, so I mean, I would just like to take it a bit ahead while we are on that traffic management. Now, traffic management also happens at the staging area, because that is also an important element to make sure that how your traffic gets manipulated and there is no queuing happening. So in the smart box design, What aspects should people be taking care of while designing the staging area and making sure that the truck movement or the turnaround time is minimum? Any thoughts on that, Mr. Siddiqui?
Definitely. Um, you can see there's a small illustration here of, a three-dimensional image of a logistics park designed by our company, One Consulting. And the first important part and the safest way of looking at it is that we need to understand that as we design highways, there are tertiary roads, there are service lanes. These entire concepts of road management and road design, is a very, very complex science. It's not a simple science. We generally think that just building surfaces is a road. It's not that. It is a lot of mathematical calculations, analysis that go into looking at the amount of vehicles that come in, types of vehicles that come in, as I mentioned to you earlier. So estate road planning, as we call it, is an important aspect where you need to first of all decide which is going to be my main estate road, which are going to be the arteries or the ulterior roads, which are going to be the secondary connecting roads, and so on and so forth. And therefore, you need to cascade the whole traffic through different types and sizes of roads, which also brings you to the point that what should be the size of my roads. Now, all roads may not be 4-lane. Some roads are 4-lane, some roads are 2-lane, and some roads have truck laybys. Like, for example, you will never find in a logistics park that there is a truck layby. When I say truck layby, a place where a truck wants to stand for a few moments. If he has to stop, he will have to stop on the road itself, inside the estate road. Now, this is, I would say, bad planning. If you have any road which is more than a kilometer inside, or more than even, I would say, 700 meters inside, it has to have a small truck layby. That's why you get these conditions. Second important part is the direction of movement. Unidirectional movement is the most ideal method of having a smart logistics park, which means that if I am able to make sure that all my vehicles are only moving in one direction, they enter from one side and they exit, turn around, and may exit from the same gate, but they take a complete round, merry-go-round route, so that there is no conflict of traffic, two-way movement of traffic. That is another very, very important aspect to look at, and derive the possibility, now that we have the setback norms where you will have to leave space between boundary wall and building. In almost all the states, you have a fair amount of setback norms where you can easily have a 2-lane road, all around. You can have a unidirectional movement rather than having everywhere a bidirectional movement. Segregation, as I mentioned, is another very, very important aspect, which helps you in making sure that you avoid with all the traffic and the smooth flow. Parking areas, I find that there are no parking areas. I mean, if you want to go and travel somewhere and go and park your car, there are no car parkings available. There are no designated bike parking areas. There are no designated vendor vehicle parking areas. So but these are all facts. You have hundreds of people coming on bikes every day. It is a fact. You have managers, assistant managers coming on, auditors, etc., coming in cars. It is a fact. Fine. So you have vendors coming to drop milk, to sugar, to stationery, to everything, which is also a fact. Now, if this is a fact, where is the consideration of these facts? Now the non-consideration of these facts is what leads to all the congestion and the problem that arise to the question that you just asked. So the smartness is about its relevance. If you are designing, keeping the relevance of a particular aspect in mind, then you will make sure that you take care of that challenge and you take care of those problems. And that is something which is very important for us to factor. So we can see here, that these are proper roads, which is very essential. Wide roads, truck terminals, docking areas, 40-feet containers being able to dock. Most of the warehouses I see in Uran, in Panvel or Ennore, when we look at going to, for example, Chennai, or you come to Bombay in Panvel area, 80% of those warehouses there are EXIM warehouses, which are dealing with import and export of material.
Right.
Fine.
Right.
every day you will find 40 feet containers coming in there and 20 to 40 feet containers going out. But is it planned and designed on that basis? No. Why?
mm,
Even some of the latest developments are not even planned
mm,
accordingly.
mm.
I can understand that there was no foresight when it went 20 years back, but today still want to plan. Now I think that's where the whole challenge is. Then I think we are missing the bus.
Right,
We are really missing the bus.
right.
And this, in my opinion, is not ignorance. This is completely an aspect of not being aware, lack of awareness, and intentional, in my opinion.
So is
You
it?
know, so that is why I mean, I just thought of using this illustration, which shows you that everything is properly defined. At the same time, gentlemen, for some of you who are in the developer and probably part of this conversation, listening to this conversation, the the ground coverage of this logistics park that you see, with so many buildings around, with all the right nice roads, wide roads, 4-lane movement, etc., is 52%. And that is exactly what you want in terms of your feasibility and the financial viability of of a logistics park. So why to cut corners when you can get 50, 52%, 53% in some cases, despite all the legitimate and legal compliances? Fine. Then why do you want to cut corners?
Mm,
I think uh, uh, it also helps you in improving the value that you're able to generate out of this business, this infrastructure. So you get good tenant rates, you get good rentals, because it's a good develop. It is designated as a good development. It's considered as a good development of operational
mm,
convenience, by the occupier. So he is willing to pay you that chip extra,
mm,
you
mm.
know. And I have seen this. Believe me, I have seen this, and I would like to encourage developers to understand this fact. I have seen this. Most of the logistics parks that are designed with all these considerations, and I can only tell you with my own personal experience, all the logistics parks that we have designed with this consideration collect a minimum of 10% extra rental, minimum of 10% extra rental from their tenants, because the tenants value this aspect, that value the smartness of these boxes.
Right, right. I think that's a very, very profound message, Mr. Siddiqui, that you have just relayed. Just an element I would like to add here of like when we are designing these warehouses and whatever you just spoke about, what is the role of weather and the seismic, non-seismic zones when we are talking about all these aspects? So some thoughts on that?
Superb, very, very, very important with the current global scenario that we can look at. I would first of all spend a few minutes in trying to explain here. If I can switch over to you directly. Is that if we are able, if we keep this aspect of weather, what is happening now? The first thing that we see that is happening, there are two aspects which are changing very fast. One is wind speed and the other is rainfall.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, more often than not, since logistics parks and warehousing centers are not small pieces of land, you're not talking about 2,000 square feet and 5,000 square feet for bungalows.
Mhm.
We are talking of 2, 3 acres, 4 acres, going up to 100, 150, 200 acres. Okay. Now, the amount of surface area where water is collected is so huge, that you need to plan for the evacuation or the consumption of that water. Otherwise, that amount of rainfall that is taking place and the sudden increase in rainfall that is taking place, you would find issues with regards to the management of the storm water, the rainwater. People ignore this part of the infrastructure.
Right.
They tend to ignore it because there's a part of the water, I'll provide a slope and it will fall away somewhere else. It will flow to somebody else's land. It will flow to the neighborhood. It will flow outside on the main road. Not realizing that it is not. It actually doesn't happen as you planned. It happens generally against what you planned. You do not provide for sufficient flows and you don't design it accordingly. It's going to backfire.
Mm, mm,
And it backfires. We have seen this historically, we have seen this, that wherever proper drainages are not provided, wherever proper rainwater harvesting system is not provided so that the water goes back to the earth, wherever there are not stormwater drainage systems with proper gutter systems, with proper sewage line, etc., is not provided in large logistics centers. There is so much of water, wastewater that is produced even on a day-to-day basis, fine, that it has to be managed properly. And with the changing of weather conditions, we have seen that bad planning of PHE, it has led to submergence of warehouses, water flooding all around. Second is when you talk about you mentioned about earthquake and seismic. Okay, there are very, very clearly established data by the government of India which tells you, what zone does your logistics park belong to, which zone does your land come in, fine, and what is the intensity of these earthquakes and shivers that we get, year on year, which seems to be worsening in certain areas. There is engineering marvels that are available and engineering standards that are available, which tells you and helps you in designing buildings, to cater to these type of shivers and these type of earthquake that happen from time to time. But if you ignore these things, then they backfire again.
Right.
So same is true with wind speed. People make small. I mean, I'll give you a small example, a little technical. Purlin spacing. Okay, the spacing of the purlins and the spacings of the girds. If I increase the spacing by another 500 mm, make it from 1 meter to 1.5 meter, I will be able to save so many kilos or so many tons of steel. Okay. Now, what is happening? It is like wearing a shirt with no body. Okay. There is no support system there. So the sheets are so thin, they're just 0.5 mm. Fine. And with extra wind that takes place, which is not in your control, okay, by any design standard, you cannot control wind. Right. It tends to buckle, just because it doesn't have sufficient support, so it buckles. Now, these are sometimes we end up optimizing to such an extent, that we do not factor for any factor of safety,
right.
And we feel that we save some money. Now that's one-time saving, but what happens when the building gets destroyed? What happens when sheets bend and they crumple? What happens then?
Right.
The expenditure is so bad planning. And I have seen, unfortunately, I'm a little blunt on this subject, that engineers don't guide their clients properly. They tend to please them by saying, oh, we will help you in reducing the cost by another 5%, and I will do it by doing like this, by giving you a little. Now, if we are misleading and misguiding, and at the end of the day, you will become a patient.
Yeah. Understood. I mean, again,
These are aspects.
Yeah. Again, very aptly put. Now, we have been speaking from overall smartness of a warehouse. Then we spoke about the logistic park concepts, we spoke about the traffic, we spoke about the weather impacting the planning. Now, if I now focus on the box itself, the smart box. So, what are the in terms of external plan, what are the parameters which are important in keeping in consideration while designing a smart box externally?
Yes, I will. Why only externally? We should also look at it internally.
Yeah.
Both the scenarios, it's important for us to look at external and internal. I completely agree with you. Now let's come into the smart box. After covering the infra. Now, one of the I would start internally. The first thing I would say here is column positions. You represent India's leading brand, on material handling and material storage. The one important part is that one of the key objectives of a warehouse is to optimize capacity, is to build capacity for storage. Just by having the columns in the wrong grid, having the columns in the wrong position, you can spend a whole day trying to match your racking system layout and still not get the best and the most maximum amount of storage locations. Okay, just because the damn columns are not at the right place. Okay, now If you are going to design warehouses oblivious to racking systems, then you will always end up in such a situation. And that is why I said the subject matter expert plays a big role, because he understands what racks are. He's supposed to understand as an SME, as an SME. As an operations expert, you need to understand what type of storage systems I'm going to have. So what is that? What is that column grid that best suits all types of storage systems, whether they are wide aisle storage, or they are narrow aisle storage, or they are mid aisle storage? You know, whether it is a multi-tier shelving system, or for that matter, it's an ASRS. Okay. How can I make sure that I have the column positions in that sweet spot, you know, where it doesn't lead to any waste of space? At the same time, it does not make my building expensive.
Right.
You know, this is definitely a challenge. It also depends on what type of industry segment you're going to be servicing, you know, in that region that you're looking at. So there are several factors that play a very, very important role as far as that. So this is just one thing that I mentioned in terms of column. Second important part, Abhishek, which is very important, is the aspect ratio. Now, what I'm seeing, you know, and I'm really concerned about this fact, you know, in the industry, that since the sizes of the boxes and the warehouses are becoming larger, we are slowly losing our focus on the very critical aspect of aspect ratio. When I talk of aspect ratio, I'm talking about the length to breadth ratio. Okay. So when people want a 4 lakh square feet warehouse, they make it 200 meters by 200 meters. That's 4 lakhs. Okay. Or for that matter, 190 meters by 220 meters. That's 4 lakhs. And you have one side docking on one side. Imagine, look at the time that it will take operationally for a boy to go and pick up one pallet 190 meters deep inside.
Right.
Fine, and come back. The efficiency is completely lost.
Correct.
Fine. And just because you feel that 190 meters is too much, you end up putting docking platforms on both sides. Fine. Now, enough thought has not gone there. I understand that the requirement of size has gone up, but it does not mean that you do not focus on the aspect ratio. So aspect ratio is very critical to the operational efficiency in the warehouse and productivity.
Right.
Fine. That is very, very important as far as the building sizing is concerned, and that has to be kept in mind and has to be planned appropriately. Heights of buildings. It doesn't cost too much to increase the height from 9 meters to 12 meters. Fine. But it improves your capacity by over 25%.
Right.
Okay. And you are a marketer of material handling equipment. You know, as time is going ahead, you know, taller and taller reach heights of MHEs, fine, is becoming cheaper day by day.
Right.
It's not going to become more and more expensive. If you look at over a 10-year horizon, you know, I mean, what used to cost earlier now is not that expensive, in the sense that now you have got better technology, you've got safer technology to go taller and reach higher, you know, as such. So why not look at that forecast? I mean, from that vision, we need to design. So heights of buildings, docking platforms, docking areas, you know, we are talking about 1.2 meters for the past so many years. We've been talking of plinth heights of 1.2 meters. Fine. Whenever I look at building trucks today now, most of them are 1.3, 1.4 meters height. Let's put a dock leveler. My point is that can we revisit that standard 4 feet or 1.2 meters and look at a higher number, because that's what is changing. So the constant evolution. Human access, insulation, you know, insulation, very important. I still remember we were one of the first to start specifying insulation, and today it has made a huge change in the entire, working environment internally by providing lesser temperature. Not to talk about toilets, canteens, you know, still there ain't sufficient toilets. Still, there is no separate toilet for the two genders. Fine, you still find one common toilet which is to be used. These are very, very small, extremely important human touches. Fine, in warehouses. I would like to sum up this question on the internal side by saying make a warehouse a better place of work. I mean, there is so much that is produced from a warehouse in terms of business. Your business depends on what the warehouse delivers.
Right.
In terms, there's a direct connection to the customer. If you don't provide these human facilities, appropriate human facilities, your people are not going to work for you any longer for a much long period of time, because they are becoming very sensitive to these provisions that you're making to them. So intra warehouse aspects I mentioned, ventilation system. Fine. Ventilation system is very, very important. Just by putting a turbo ventilator or putting, having other type of ventilation systems, for that matter, roof monitors, is it enough? No, I think now we're looking at HVLS fans, which should be installed so that you're able to get some better circulation, etc. So these basic small elements are important. I have seen people with 3 lakh square feet facilities and the toilet in one corner.
Wow. Yeah. Right.
Just one corner.
Right.
I think along with everyday entry, they should be given diapers, to their employees.
Right.
So,
Right.
so such important aspects have to be in terms of the operational, and that is why we say these are functional buildings. They have to be designed keeping the operations functions in mind and the human capital in mind.
Right.
Externally, as you mentioned, we've talked about traffic a lot. So apron sizes are very, very critical and important. How do I make sure that I design my aprons in such a way that it can handle small vehicles, which I'd say talk of the shorter plinth vehicles, lighter commercial vehicles, and it can also handle heavy commercial vehicles at the same time, because now the use of smaller vehicles is becoming more and more prominent in warehouses as compared to the large ones. Large ones are great for long hauls, but when it comes to city distribution, we are talking of smaller vehicles as such. So apron designs have to be such that you are having manipulative or adjustable road, I would say, heights or levels, so that you can cater to smaller and larger vehicles. Small provisions like DG set platforms, scrap yards, parking stations, security gates of your own. I mean, today I find the security guards are not standing at the right place. The poor chaps are standing in sun. We don't have proper guard huts for them. If there are guard huts, there is no provision for water. There is no provision for toilets there. Drivers are coming in. They're not looking at. There is no provision for driver toilets. The drivers are leaking around the whole place. So these hygiene centers, common hygiene centers, are very, very important.
Right.
In the overall infrastructure. Scrap yards. There's so much of scrap that is being generated in terms of pallets, broken pallets, cardboard, paper, nails, plastic, that is being generated, and then they're all littering around the whole place. We don't have any waste segregation. I don't find anywhere we've got blue bins and green bins and red bins, whereas you are generating so much of waste. So these are all design aspects that we need to cater to in warehouses. I think I've mentioned quite a few for us to chew for some time. And even if we are able to consider 50% of whatever I've said, I think we will find a completely different ecosystem and a different texture of warehouses all around our cities.
So this is, I would say, what a difference is between a theoretist and a practitioner. Like when a practitioner speaks, he speaks about what actually is the ground reality, and that is what I really appreciate, Mr. Siddiqui, that the points that you're bringing in are very basic, very closer to the ground reality. And if they are taken care of, and you're very right in saying that warehouse should be considered as a place to work, not some a place where people are put away like there nobody is caring about them. Now, there's just one quick question which has come in from the audience. We spoke about the aspect ratio. So somebody has asked that what is the ideal aspect ratio of a warehouse? I mean, as per recommendation.
So to answer your question, what is the ideal aspect ratio? The aspect ratio, there is no standard ideal aspect ratio. Aspect ratios change with size of the floor. Okay, so if you have a warehouse which is 1 lakh square feet, a good aspect ratio would be something like 1:2.5. So you would say a 60 meters by 150 meters for a 1 lakh square feet is a very, very ideal size. Also, it depends on the business that you're running. So if you are a business which has got too much of processes going on inside the warehouse. There we are talking of aspect ratios of even as skewed as as proportionate as 1:2. You can go up to 90 meters to, for example, for 11 lakh square feet, you can go up to 90 meters multiplied by the length, which gives you 100,000 square feet. So aspect ratios are dependent on two factors. One is the floor plate. The second is the activity in the warehouse. So these are the two clearly governing factors. If your staging requirements are more, then your aspect ratios also can be further skewed. You can have 1:3 as well. So companies which operate in staging areas of 6 to 10 meters, fine, work on aspect ratios of 1:1.25, 1:1.27. Companies which have got large staging area requirements because they have a lot of holding, QC, waiting, or dispatch side packing, picking, quality check and counting before dispatch and labeling and so on and so forth. They require large staging areas, inward staging areas, outward staging areas. There the aspect ratios are as good or as bad as 1:2.
Okay, okay. Now, I have one follow-through question of you mentioned a very interesting and a very practical aspect again of the columns coming in the way of designing an efficient racking system, right? Now,
Yes.
Mr. Siddhi, what actually happens is, and what we are seeing, there are a lot of boxes which are sprouting across the country, like which are available for lease, and there are big boxes. Now, these boxes are
Okay.
not really built around any particular racking system. They're available to be used on like built to suit basis or something like that. Okay. So they're not really built to suit. I mean, they are just made boxes and then people are going in, people are going in and trying to, yeah, speculative basis. Now, what should be the design considerations of such warehouses so that they are avoiding these pitfalls, the pitfalls that you just spoke about? Columns not at the right space, aspect ratio not being the right one. I mean, is there any sort of thumb rule for that?
Yeah. So the good question, in terms of basically saying which is that sweet grid. I call it, the column grid, which is absolutely sweet, both in terms of economy as well as in terms of operational ability.
Right.
Yeah. So normally what people use in terms of grid sizes, internal grid sizes, is basically column spacing of about 24 to 25 meters on one side on the y-axis, and then leading up to 17 odd meters on the x-axis. Now, generally what we suggest is that use wide aisle, narrow aisle, two aspects, for the purpose of the planning. The planners who are planning for the warehouses and doing the internal layout plans should consider both narrow aisle and wide aisle in one of my exhibits. And I can show you here, for example. You can see these are column spacings here.
Right.
Okay. Right. And these column spacings are absolutely integrated in this area. Okay. Now here we have got wide aisle. In this one, these are two wide aisles, and you can see here these are narrow aisles. These are narrow aisles, and this one is extra wide aisle. You can see now here the pallet size is much bigger. This is a 2.4 meter by 1.8 meter pallet, a very, very abnormal size of pallet. So we can ignore that super wide aisle scenario. Now in this case, in the super wide aisle scenario, these columns have failed. When I say they've failed, they've come in the aisle. But here you have got a wide aisle, this is wide aisle and this is narrow aisle, and in both the cases the columns are within the column line, within the rack line, and not in the aisle. Okay, so this is a warehouse building designed by us, where it is designed keeping a standard narrow aisle overlaid over a wide aisle, and then the columns are positioned. Now, I will tell you why I'm not giving the exact number is that it is not necessary for you to always have the columns at equal spacing throughout the length of the building.
Okay.
Okay. It does not make any major cost differentia also if you have one column grid at 5 meters, and the second one at 15.4 meters, the third one at 16.5, 15.4, 16.5, 15. It doesn't make a difference. Fine. On the cost side. On the cost side, if at all, I mean, for correctness sake, if at all it makes a 0.5% difference here and there, fine. For the rest of the life, you would have a warehouse which is compatible to narrow as well as wide aisle.
Right.
So design the warehouses without this misnomer that every bay has to be equal. You can have alternately equal bays. And that is what will give you the combination and the compatibility to both aisles.
Right. I think very well explained, Mr. Siddiqui. Now, over the last almost an hour, we have been discussing about various aspects related to design elements, the infrastructure elements, the logistic park elements. I would just like to dive a bit deeper into now the technology within the box, the technology bit. Okay. What's happening in the technology part, and where is that sort of tipping point between manual versus automation, robotics versus general conventional equipment being used? Some sort of a view from you, Mr. Siddiqui.
So first of all, I would like to say that this is like currently most of the warehouse operators, I'm talking of the operators, are in major dilemma, when it comes to the word automation. In India, the word automation has been either it has been oversold or it has been missold. Okay. Understanding of automation is a little bit, the definition of automation in India is a little different from what the actual definition of automation is. Right. Mechanization in India, in many cases, is translated as automation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
So if I have a forklift at 14 meters tall, I have a man-up forklift, man-up VNA. It is some of the people feel that, wow, I have an automated warehouse. Okay. So here we are trying to first of all misconstrue between automation and mechanization.
Right.
Okay. First of all, I would like to tell the audience here that if there is no intelligence in the machine, then it is not automation. It is not automated. Okay. Right. It is mechanized. Okay. Similarly, by putting a conveyor belt, which is carrying material from here to there, you are not automated. Similarly, if you just put a conveyor belt, which is carrying one box from here to there, fine, you are not automated. That is not automation. So this is one. These are the first. The first is the definition of automation. Fine. If you have a conveyor belt, which is carrying boxes from here to there, and in its way, it has to take a decision of going left or right, then it is automation.
Right.
Understood?
Right.
So that is one thing. Now the question is, what is the dose of automation that I need? Adoption of automation is like prescribing a dose of medicine. It's like prescribing a dose of medicine. How much of automation, how much of mechanization do I need is a very, very detailed matter of detailed analysis and understanding. What is my throughput? What is the rate of increase of my throughput? Is my process vanilla process, a standard process which can be replaced by machine? Is there any intelligence that the human being is doing? Fine. Is it going to be difficult for a human being to do this job? Will there be errors in his doing so? These are the various very fundamental basic questions that we need to ask before we even think of moving from mechanization or manual to mechanization to automation.
Right.
Okay. So today, many organizations who need to mechanize have not mechanized, who need to move from mechanization to some level of automation have not automated. And there are many companies who did not need any of this and they have automated.
Okay. Okay. So,
You get my
yeah,
point?
absolutely, absolutely. So, when we, I think you have very rightly categorized manual to mechanization to automation. Now, if we just try to talk about the elements, because as you very rightly said, there is a lot of talk going around and lot of buzz going around the word automation. So, what exactly is happening in this space? I mean, which is true automation in that sense?
So, if you ask me, this is true automation. Okay, where you have automatic storage and retrieval system. There is no human being there. It's a machine that goes into a dark space. It brings out the right palette, the right material, and presents it to you. This is automation. A vertical carousel, a large box. The large box has, it's not seen. The product is not seen. You punch an order. It understands the order and it presents to you on a tray the material. Okay. A-frames, where the orders are automatically dropped onto a moving tray, on just on the basis of an order entry. Horizontal carousels, where the material. So these are, a lot of this is goods to man material. Sortation systems. Delhi, Calcutta, Ahmedabad, Hyderabad, Pune, Nasik, Chennai, Chandigarh, Ludhiana. Earlier we used to do all this. We used to sort material, read and sort. Now it's these machines which are just reading the barcode and then they sort. Read the barcode, sort, barcode and sort. This is what. So this is true in its true sense, automation happening. Okay. Now, what justifies this is volume. First of all, do I have that consistent volume? Am I going to have this seasonal volume? Will it be difficult for me to operate with so many? Are my current error rates high? We need to evaluate these aspects before we go there. What is the cost of automation? Am I going to be able to get a return on my investment? And many organizations have positive answers to this and therefore they adopt the automation.
Right.
Fine. We should not get shy with the fact that I don't have it. It did not make sense to you. It is not for your purpose. Okay. So warehouses have automation, should adopt their automation, and their operations should get automated if they want to, if it makes sense by these aspects, that are elements that I just mentioned to you. Error rates going down, their fill rates going up, picking errors going down, and the volumes, the productivity, the efficiency, the amount of being able to do more in less time, okay, makes a lot of sense for automation. ASRS gives you a lot of storage density. It gives you a lot of storage density. At the same time, it gives you a lot of speed as well. Now, if density and speed, both of them are important to you, and it makes sense for you to make that investment, then please go ahead. But do your maths and evaluation appropriately before you get to the automation. So automation, in a very general sense in India, I think it's applicable to a small 3 to 4% of the total warehousing ecosystem. Mechanization is applicable and should be consumed, to the fat belly of the entire ecosystem or the entire industry, where it is about 60 to 70%. And I think the balance, 25-30%, will remain manual.
Right. So one of the follow-through question that arises is that when we talk about any automation project, there are two aspects to it. One aspect is the capex investment and the visibility of the company to look really long term. rather than looking at a very quick ROI within 1 or 2 years.
Yes.
Okay, so that is one aspect. The other aspect is the scalability. Like once you are in with a block with a certain volume, what if the volumes like go up and down? So how do people generally take care of that in the planning or the designing stage?
India is a country of seasonalities.
Mm-hmm.
We have multiple seasons. We don't have just one Christmas and a New Year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have 5 Christmases in a year.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, so we are a country of peaks and troughs. Okay, constantly. It makes a lot of sense in our case. If you got 5 peaks, then you can normalize the peak by using machine. You can, and the understanding of our peaks, whether it is to do with your order peaking, it's your inward peaking, or for that matter, any throughputs. So the important part of it is to first understand and have historic data and proper forecasting in terms of how will these peak through the year. So we need to plot that very clearly and understand that clearly. Once we have done that, then we look at the normalization process, the process of normalization. To invest for that peak is a matter of argument. What happens when you have a trough? Will you build redundancy? What is that level of redundancy? So yes, in a cyclical business which peaks 3 or 4 times a year, there definitely will be an element of redundancy that you will create during the troughs, during the time when the businesses are low. Fine. But it still makes sense for you to be able to invest the money, because the peaks, the 5 peaks itself will help you in gaining the return on that investment.
Right.
Because it is at that time that resources are also least. Everybody is peaking at that time.
Right.
We are all having Holi. So color sale is peaking already.
Correct.
Okay, when we are having Diwali, you will have sweet sales peaking, throughout everywhere in the country. So resources become very scarce. Resources are very scarce. And then you have to, now with more and more with technology, what would happen? You will require skilled people to operate these machines. So therefore you will have to build the redundancy within. You will not get them, you will not get these resources at the chai and at pan tapris. You will have to garner them internally.
Right.
Okay. So therefore it makes sense. Look at your peaks and troughs, normalize your requirement, in between. Fine. Look at that percentile that you need to be at, and based on that, take your decisions. Your peaks will be able to work out, will be able to add back to your return on investment.
Right. Right. So while Mr. Siddiqui,
And that's
right, I mean, very well explained, Mr. Siddiqui. So while we talk about automation, I think we still are talking about a very niche set of companies who actually will find it useful, and actually it will be useful for them both ways. Okay. So, but having said that, the mechanization bit, what we spoke about, is going to find its space and going to get its growth year on year as the infrastructure improves and as the know-how of a smart box increases and inflection increases. So my next question is related to the mechanization bit. So what are the inflection points of selecting the right storage and handling systems in any smart box?
good question. So what are those inflection points? First of all, as you rightly said, that in terms of dispatch area, when it comes to sorting material, definitely we can invest in automation there. That is something which will become very popular as we move ahead. Most of these sorting centers have become automated. Look at the sorting centers of e-commerce companies. Most of them are automated, and they can't do without that because the volumes are so large. The pieces are so small. They are not. So that makes a lot of sense. So there will be a lot of automation that will happen at the dispatch end of of the processes when you are coming to segregate material to various to 20 and 30 and 40 destinations at the same time. So you will have automation happening at that end. Picking automation will happen a little more slower because that is more complex and a little more expensive. So your mini load ASRS, your SRS, etc., will take more time, before it really goes deeper into the businesses, into businesses. So that is the second part. Now coming to the point of inflection, first important thing is the profile of your SKU. Everybody needs to understand the profile of their SKU. Is their SKU profiled in a certain manner, in this manner, that you are able to, when you are actually doing that choice of the various storage systems, handling equipment, what is the profile of my SKU? So if I'm manufacturing textile rolls, then that is a completely different profile as compared to selling laptops, or televisions, which are well profiled, rectangular, cuboid material. So profile plays an extremely important role. Weights play an extremely important role. Packaging, what form of packaging do we have, plays a very important role. Okay. So second thing that is important is the processes. If I'm in a very vanilla process, I'm just operating as a standard storage warehouse where I receive material, store material, pick the same material, dispatch the same material, then my processes are extremely vanilla. I can do a lot of work with mechanization and get rid of the inefficiencies just by putting a lot of forklifts and racking systems and HPTs and BOPTs and all that. You can fill up the whole place to handle material. So material handling becomes important. Storage systems, you can put pallet racking and so on and so forth, the standard stuff. But if my receiving and packing and dispatching is infused with a lot of processes in between, before I put away, I have a lot of process at the inward stage. I have a lot of process at the outward stage of checking, packing, labeling, stickering, all that. Then, I need to start evaluating it from a completely different standpoint, and then look at mix of mechanization and automation. So my picking, am I picking eaches? Am I picking bundles? Am I picking and kitting? Am I picking assembling? How big are these pieces? Am I going to pick each one order, or am I going to do wave picks and batch picking, etc.? All these aspects will change the profile of the storage system that you are going to look at. Fundamentally, I am fundamentally I come from the school of thought, that your entire storage system fundamentally should be designed on the basis of your picking profile rather than on the basis of your inward profile. Because it is there that the speed is required. It is at the pick time and the pick phase. Pick phases have to be very efficient as compared to the put away phase. So that becomes a major inflection point in terms of your system. Handling sizes, as I mentioned to you, what is that final size of handling that you are doing? Okay. And whether you are able to handle with one person, 5 kgs. Some people come to us and when we discuss this, say, the weight of my product is only 5.5, 6 kilos. I said, don't think that are you going to only pick one in a day?
Right.
No. You're going to pick a one in a day, then I think we all carry our office bags which are 3 to 4 kilos, and we are quite used to that. But if you're going to pick hundreds a day, then the whole dynamics changes. The human behavior changes. You will find people running away from the company, because then you are trying to say that I want to pick, 30 of them together or 40 of them together. Imagine a person picking 5 to 7 kgs boxes, 30 of them together. Fatigue, will play in. So these are, and obviously the final thing is availability of space. Where am I? Am I a city distribution center where I'm sitting on 100 rupee per square feet area, a rental, or 50 rupees per square, or am I sitting in a warehousing area which is at 15 to 20 rupees a square feet area? So how much of space is available to me? Do I need to go vertical? Can I afford to remain horizontal? And so on and so forth. So these are various elements of inflection points. Fine, and these are the points that will help you in deciding whether what is the extent and what type of material handling equipment I need to go for. What is the throughput that I actually have and I will have to look at the type of equipment, the storage systems, and what is my picking, and these are the various points that will lead to the design basis.
Right, right.
I hope I've answered the
No, absolutely, very comprehensively as always. So I think we never realized that we're almost at the end of the time, and there's so much more to discuss. We can go on and on, but I think
Oh,
we'll have to respect the time of the audience also. But I would still like to have one last question, which is very, very relevant in today's time, is that we all know how the pandemic has impacted the supply chain in both the good way in terms of disrupting and in a very fantastic way in terms of showing the resilience and jumping back in a much different way. Like 15 minutes delivery and 30 minutes delivery was like unheard of in before that. I
absolutely.
mean, all that has like been brought forward by pandemic. So how do you think that we bring in this sort of resilience, this sort of agility in supply chain to take care, and especially the smart box that we're talking about, designing a smart box that is able to weather such disruptions in future as well?
Yeah. So let me first of all answer your question in the first in the first breath. You use the word supply chain. You know, so I think the challenges to supply chain is good planning and forecasting. Okay. So the supply chain executives now need to get their act together in terms of improving their accuracy in terms of planning and forecasting. Okay, because there is going to be very little scope for large errors. There is a lot of scope for errors, but there's a very little scope for large errors. Obsolescence, because space will become expensive. It is becoming expensive after pandemic. We have seen that the cost of everything has gone up. Okay, space is going up, cost of infrastructure is going up, land prices have gone up, building steel is at its mad, it's a mad phase. I call it as a mad phase. You know, over the past 3 years, we've seen the price of steel almost doubling. You know, we have seen price of cement going up. You know, everything. So infrastructure, building, everything is going up. Diesel prices, imagine where they are. So the cost of creation, delivery of that, the whole back end of the service has gone up. Okay. Now, which means that if we want to avoid wastage, then we will have to be more accurate. You know, otherwise we will end up with wastage. Okay, that's the simple way of looking at it. So planning and forecasting has, so which means the sales guys also have to they have to be very clear that, boss, this is what will be in demand. So I think the sales guys now need to wear their intelligent hats rather than just forecasting on the basis of some feel factor. So it's not about feel factor. That's where we talk about artificial intelligence, data analytics, etc., all happening because of that. The pandemic has led to two very important things. One is internet penetration. The internet penetration is now being exploited in its fullest way. Okay, which means that people are using handheld devices. People are using devices to order. Okay, work from home has led to increase in disposable income because expenses have gone down. Average 5,000 to 10,000 rupees on expense on conveyance has gone down because now people are working from home. Cost of the use of trousers have gone up. Shirts have remained the same because you can be wearing a shirt and be online without a trouser. So that's another. So those type of savings have helped the world. Now that's on the lighter side. The real side is that the pandemic led to the fact that online trading, online procurement, online purchase went up. You were sitting on your desk, working and buying things. You were releasing your pressure and tension by buying small and things. You were not willing to wait. With the competition increasing, everybody started promising next day delivery, and then we realized that everybody's next day. So now mine is same day. Oh, everybody's same day. So mine will be PM. Oh, now it's got to be AM, and now it's going to be blink.
Right.
Okay. So yeah. So this is how the whole evolution has happened, and it has happened within 6 months. I won't say even a year. It all happened within. Now, if this is the expectation, then what, and this is the service level demand, then look at the pressure on the supply chain, on the service side of the supply chain. Fulfillment centers converted from fulfillment centers, they became dark stores. So now you started moving closer. See, the geographical distance cannot be reduced. That is a given. If you stay 10 kilometers away from my house 100 years back, and today also you stay, both of us stay in the same place, it is still 10 kilometers. Even 100 years later.
Right.
So the distance has not changed. The proximity has changed. So we have become closer. Because I need to service you, I am going closer. Because my clusterization, I can now understand that I've got a cluster of customers with 2,000 customers in a vicinity of 400 meters. Now I can come closer to them. So I need to become proximate. So the proximity has changed. I have come closer. And this is where the service requirement of dark stores, the service requirement of pickup centers, the service requirements of fulfillment centers, micro distribution centers have gone up. Now these micro distribution centers are small in size. They can't be very large because they're very close in they're in the high streets of the city. They're right in the center of the city. They can't be big because they're going to be too expensive. So they have to be closer. The moment they have to be smaller, I beg your pardon, they have to be smaller. The moment they're smaller, then they have to manage more in less. They have to be agile. They will have to handle more throughputs in less time. They have to be accurate. They cannot deliver a sanitizer when you ask for a bottle of cooking oil. You know, they can't make those mistakes. Okay. So that is something which is constantly leading to the performance pressure. Okay. And the performance pressure will have to be delivered, will have to be overcome by a good combination of skill and machinery.
Right.
So you will have these dark stores which are slowly going to get automated and highly automated, because from 15 minutes, if it has gone down in, for certain items, it has become 15 minutes. For most of the items, it's still a couple of days. Okay. But those items which are a couple of days will start becoming same day. And then imagine the billions of items that will have to be delivered on the same day. The pressure will be too high. And the only way would be that you are going to set the processes in a way that they will either be automated, they will be mechanized, they will be run by skilled people, they will be run by logics, software. All that will come into picture that will eliminate, all the possibilities of either a delay or a mistake.
Right.
So this is what the pandemic has done and will consistently lead to do. Even if you look at fashion, I mean, one small piece of information. Today, the retail, even the brick and mortar retail business, the retail business is also growing up. There was a time when the total number of warehouses in India were highest amount of warehouses were occupied by third-party logistics companies. Right. Okay. Slowly now, the e-commerce business, e-commerce industry has surpassed, the occupation of warehouses as compared to third-party logistics companies. However, at the same breath, there is this segment, this sector of retail, which is also growing very fast and occupying more and more warehouses. More of them is also because that they are not only servicing their brick and mortar store, but they are also creating their own personal e-commerce websites.
Right.
E-commerce websites. And they are servicing both B2B and B2C from the same facility. Now that is the new generation where you have B2B and B2C both from the same facility. Earlier you had only e-commerce which was B2C from one facility, one large facility, mega facility or micro facility, whatever, but it was a pure one channel. Now you've got multiple channels being serviced from the same facility, and that is going to be the changing order of the day.
Right.
Coming out of the pandemic.
Right. I think very beautifully explained. We are we have overshot on time, so we cannot take any more questions. So today's session has been a big revelation for me personally, and I'm sure for the audience. I am trying to bring in an analogy of a drone which is flying at a height, and then that drone is seeing a view from a 15,000 feet logistic park and all the infrastructure and all that, and then that drone is brought down, it comes nearer to the four walls, and we have still taken a view of the roads infrastructure and the ramps and everything. Then the drone goes inside, and then we look around the warehouse and we are looking at all the aspects and all that, and by the time we come out, we have a very knowledgeable drone which knows almost what constitutes a smart box. Before we formally close this event, any closing comments that you would like to have on the topic warehouse to smart box, the new wave? Any closing comments?
Deepen your knowledge, improve your insights in the business that you do, and actually go back and look at the dictionary meaning of two words, intelligence and passion. If you're able to decipher the meanings of these two words, you will become better and better in the business. And this industry of warehousing, which has come a very long way, very long way, will become the industry of choice for the most skilled and intelligent people in the world.
I mean, very well said. There cannot have been a better ending for this, and we could not have got a better speaker than you, Mr. Siddiqui, to talk on this topic. I'm sure this session, we are going to put the recording on the social media. I'm sure this will be a recording which will be seen many times by academicians, by subject matter experts, by planners, just to get an understanding that what are the key pointers in setting up a warehouse. And it has come in at just the right time. And I would really take this opportunity to thank you, Mr. Siddiqui, for taking time out of your busy schedule. And we really appreciate your time and the knowledge, I would say the profound knowledge that you have shared. Really, lot of respect and thank you. Thank you so much. And at this,
Thank you very much.
yeah, please. Uh, with that, we come to the close of the event. We thank all the participants. We would request all the participants to please fill in the feedback form. That is very important for us to help us understand how we have done in today's event, and use the same feedback form to let us know if you want us to cover any other topic in forthcoming sessions. And we will come back to you talking about that particular topic, and we will be calling in another expert like we have had the privilege of having Mr. Siddiqui today. We'll have another sort of dignitary coming in basis the feedback that we receive. With that, thank you very much to all of you for your time. We look forward to seeing you again next month with another topic under the Storage and Handling Knowledge series. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you very much. God bless.